Hey guys, today I'm going to talk to you guys about Oceania. So this is kind of a fun one. So we're going to talk about like the different Pacific islands um, that are all part of what makes up Oceania. We talked about the three different groups um, when we talked about the physical geography of it. So today we're going to talk about the cultural geography of it. Okay, so the islands are probably inhabited were probably inhabited by Asians about 30,000 years ago. So they basically moved down into the islands, starting with this area here. Okay, like coming down from the Philippines and then coming down into this area and then slowly moving out this direction. So there's the three major groups of islands. So you have Papua New Guinea, Fiji, and Solomon Islands make up Melanesia. And Papua New Guinea's largest ethnic group is called the Chimbu, and they're notable for their egalitarian social structure. So what that means is that it's very equal in that ethnicity or in that culture. And so Papua New Guinea, just right, FYI, is right sitting right there. And then Micronesia. So this is Micronesia, the purple part here. So this is consisting of the Federated States of Micronesia, Nauru, and then Kiribati. Also, Guam and the Marshall Islands are in there, but those are territories of the United States. There's a lot of different languages and cultures in there, and we're going to see that a lot. That's going to be kind of a common theme as we go through um, and talk about these. Is they have a lot of very distinct cultures and a lot of different languages because they're so geographically isolated. And then Polynesia is obviously the biggest group, so that's the yellow group here. So in that, you have the countries of Samoa, Tonga, and Tuvalu. This also includes French Polynesia, which includes the island of Tahiti, is probably the most famous from that. They practice horticulture. So, horticulture is the raising of plants and fruit on small plots of land. And most of the Polynesians have similar language and cultures. Okay, now when I say similar, I mean like the languages are similar, but there's a lot of them are still technically different languages. So we'll talk about that as we get into it. So history and government. So the early migrations, like I said, the Asians came down. This is a little better map to show you that. So they came down. There's China right there. There's Taiwan, and they came down through the Philippines and then went kind of this direction. Okay, and then started settling into those islands. And as they settled, they primarily settled on the island coast, and they survived on fish, obviously turtles and shrimp, and as well as breadfruit and coconuts. Okay, so a lot of different like tropical types of fruit in that. They're going to cultivate root crops as well, so like taro and yams, and they're going to raise small animals, in particular chickens and pigs. They're also going to build canoes, and they're going to travel and trade among the different islands. And some islands used strings of shells as money. And so this right here is an example of what's called shell money. And this is still used in New Britain. And New Britain is actually right here, just off of the Papua New Guinea there. It's actually a part of Papua New Guinea. So, but still used to this day, which is kind of interesting. Okay. So European colonization. So the Europeans are going to come in the 1800s, and they're going to develop commercial plantations for growing sugarcane, pineapples, and then any other kind of tropical products that they want to grow. So what's going to happen is pretty much a really similar situation as to what happens in Latin America when the Europeans came. Is they're going to want to exploit the labor of the people who are living there, but their diseases are going to wipe out large portions of the population. So they're going to, instead of pulling, like in Latin America, they pulled labor from Africa and brought it to Latin America. In this case, they're going to take people from other island nations and South Asia, so like India, to come in and replace that labor force. And so what's going to happen is in places like Fiji and like the Solomon Islands, we're going to see a lot of ethnic conflicts. And all while that's going on, not only are the Europeans doing that, they're also doing the same thing they did in Africa and Latin America when they colonized, is they're trying to replace the customs and traditions. Okay, so they're trying to introduce Christianity, and they're trying to make it more European style culture. Okay, all right. So this right here shows up to 1900 the extent of European colonization in Oceania. So it's not just Europe, as you can see. So it's mostly Europe, but then you can see there's a lot of American possessions as well. So by 1900, we controlled Midway, Hawaii, Johnston Atoll. There's nobody lives on that one. Kingman Reef, Palmyra Atoll. I don't think anybody lives on those either. Wake Island, Guam. People do live in those places. And we have, since then, we'll talk about the U.S. is going to gain more of those possessions. Some of these other ones, like Marshall Islands, Mariana Islands, those are right now. Those are territories of the United States as well. But anyway, you can see the Germans have a pretty large presence here. Obviously, the Americans do. The British, the French, all have pretty big influence in Oceania. Okay. So after World War One, many of the colonies will come under control of Japan. So Japan's going to start to imperialize, and they're going to control, on this map here, they're going to control by 1942. You can see it right here. They're going to control everything that is yellow / green here. Okay, so all of this. So it's pretty big empire there for Japan. So during World War II, we're going to see a lot of battles in the Pacific, on these Pacific islands. So obviously the first one is going to take place in Hawaii. So this is before Hawaii was a state. So it was a territory of the United States at the time. It's Pearl Harbor. And then you're going to see kind of how we go through. Biggest battle of the war, or one of the biggest battles of the war, was this one right here, Battle of Iwo Jima. Battle of Midway. This is considered to be the turning point of World War II in the Pacific, because this is when the U.S. starts kind of going on the offensive. So this is when we start to island hop. Okay, and you can see the island hopping happening here. So basically what we're trying to do is get closer and closer to Japan. Iwo Jima being a very big battle as well. Okay, and then obviously we're going to win the war. So after we defeat Japan, many of the islands, like Micronesia, for example, were turned over to the United States. And so we controlled these as what were called trust territories. And so what that means is that these islands were dependent areas that the UN placed under temporary control of a foreign country, in this case, the United States. Okay, so the UN was created after World War II, and then the U.S. controlled these territories, and most of them are independent now. Most of them, if they said we want to be independent, we didn't fight them on it. We just said, okay, yeah, go for it. Okay, so we're pretty much like, okay, you don't want to be part of the United States? Don't be part of the United States. Okay, but some countries or some territories, like Guam, Marshall Islands, Midway, we still own those. We still control those. Obviously, Hawaii is still part of the United States, as that is now a state. But there's, as you can see, a lot of the fighting happened in these islands. Okay, so this is leading up to World War II. The islands that Japan controlled is what I kind of wanted to show you. So you can see the extent. Everything in red is what they controlled. So you can see the extent of control. And then you can see kind of how that's conflicting with the United States and what we controlled. Okay, so you can see like we controlled these blue ones here. We controlled the Philippines over here. And we didn't want them to expand farther than they already had. Okay. So sports and leisure. So the Western style resorts, there's a lot of Western style resorts in Oceania, because as I'm sure you can tell, it's a paradise. You know, it looks like a paradise there. Awesome place to go. And so it attracts a lot of tourists, and so a lot of them go there to surf. So they have like really good surfing waves. And Other sports, like more traditional sports, would be like outrigger canoeing, and spearfishing would be more traditional sports that they would engage in. And then former U.S. territories, or even current U.S. territories, baseball is very popular there. Obviously, it's very popular in the United States. And then in the French and German territories, um, cycling, soccer, volleyball, tennis are all very popular. And a lot of people just like enjoy hanging out on the beach. So that's like another big thing that they do is they just relax on the beach. So as I'm sure you can imagine, that sounds awesome. Okay. So language and religion. So like I said before, the islands are geographically isolated. Okay, so they're islands, obviously, so they are isolated by water, and so there's a lot of different languages in Oceania. So the world in total has about 3,000 languages. Of those, about 1,200 are in Oceania alone. So almost half of the languages of the world languages are in this one area. French and English are also widely spoken, and there's a English. It's called Pidgin English, and it's like a simplified form of English that is kind of a combination of English and more indigenous languages. So it's something that is, if you know one or the other, you can pretty much speak it. So it's easier to communicate between different islands. As far as religion goes, they're mostly Christian, but some combination with the traditional beliefs. Okay, so the only place where it's even, well, the highest other religious group is going to be Hindus, and that's just in Fiji. It's mostly just because when the Europeans brought a bunch of people from India into to replace that labor that we were talking about before, they brought them, so they brought their religion with them. They introduced Hinduism, and so a lot of people in Fiji, about 30%, are Hindus. Okay. Education and healthcare. So it really varies. It's very inconsistent in regards to the quality of education. It kind of just depends on where you're at. So in a lot of the island nations, it's not uncommon. So like Solomon Islands, Fiji, Papua New Guinea, secondary schools, colleges are very common. Okay. Literacy rates range in Oceania from, on the high end, 93% in Fiji. This is a school in Fiji, by the way, and this is a hospital in Fiji. These were the easiest pictures I could find. But 93% in Fiji to the low end at 62% in Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea has a lot more poverty related issues that kind of deter education, and also healthcare, as we can see in the next part here. So many islands have poverty related issues. So people lack fresh food, electricity, schools, hospitals, all that's pretty inadequate. But in recent years, we have seen a lot more international aid that has gone to these countries and has tried to help combat the healthcare issues, education issues that's going on in those areas. Okay, so that's it. That's Oceania. It's a pretty quick and easy one today. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. And your processor is the acrostic. Oceania is the word. And enjoy the rest of your day. All right.